Jonah Weaver, a kind-hearted farmer from Maple Ridge, arrived at the Dusty County auction, hoping only to buy seed. Yet his eyes kept drifting toward a weary gray horse tied near the fence, its ribs faintly showing through a faded winter coat. He counted the coins in his pocket, knowing they were meant for next spring's corn, but pity for the animal stirred like wind through dry stalks and made him hesitate at the seed table. The auctioneer barked lot numbers while bidders waved tickets, and Jonah felt the rhythm of sales beat like a drum until it grew silent for the lone horse nobody wanted to claim. Sunlight slanted through the barn boards, catching the animal's silver mane, and for a blinking moment Jonah imagined moonlight on river water, a memory he could not place. The old horse lowered its head as though bowing to fate, and in that small gesture Jonah felt a plea, gentle yet stronger than any shout, calling him to do something brave. With a sigh, Jonah raised his hand, offering a single humble bid that echoed in the rafters because no one else bothered to match it. The auctioneer slammed a gavel, dust puffed like smoke, and the deal was done for a price cheaper than a worn saddle blanket. Children perched on hay bales whispered that the farmer had bought nothing but trouble. Yet Jonah felt a curious warmth when the horse nudged his sleeve like an old friend. He led the animal outside, stepping around puddles of melted frost, and noticed a faint white crescent scar above its right eye that reminded him of the thin moon over Maple Ridge fields. A local stable boy offered a worn rope halter, saying the horse had stood quietly all morning, neither kicking nor biting, only waiting as if it expected someone brave to notice. Jonah thanked the boy and whispered soothing words, realizing the animal's ears flicked with understanding, suggesting a sharper mind than its tired frame revealed. He walked the horse 3 miles home, every hoofbeat steady, and he wondered how bones so thin could still move with such easy rhythm across rutted country lanes. Passing neighbors leaned on fence rails, trading jokes about Jonah's knack for rescuing hopeless causes, but their laughter rolled off him like rain off a tin roof. The farmhouse dog Patch met them at the gate, barking once then wagging like crazy before trotting alongside as if recognizing a future teammate. Jonah poured oats into a wooden trough, though the grain was meant for the milk cow, and watched the horse lap the meal with delicate care, making not a kernel spill. When he filled the water tub, he saw the horse's reflection ripple, and he thought its dark eyes held stories longer than any winding river in the county. The evening sun painted the barn wall gold, and Jonah decided to name the newcomer Silver Star, not for speed but for the gentle spark he sensed beneath the dull coat. Inside the tack room, he found an old blanket that smelled of lavender soap, tucked away since his late wife's riding days, and he draped it across Silver Star's back. He wondered what Ruth would have said about spending seed money on a stray, yet he could almost hear her teasing voice approving, because kindness was the harvest she valued most. Silver Star shifted weight, letting out a sigh that sounded like relief, and Jonah felt his own shoulders loosen after weeks of worry about drought and debt. He brushed the horse with firm strokes, discovering beneath the mud a map of tiny scars that hinted at hard journeys over stones and shadows. A flutter of sadness passed through him, but it was quickly followed by resolve to make the animal's last years the best picnic blanket of days he could spread. He checked the hooves and found each shoe thin but intact, stamped with a strange emblem he did not recognize, like 2 crossing arrows inside a circle. Jonah made a note to ask the blacksmith about the mark, sensing it might hold a clue to the horse's past adventures far beyond Maple Ridge. Night fell, cicadas sang, and stars pricked the velvet sky as Jonah locked the barn door, confident Silver Star would rest easy on fresh straw. He walked back to the empty farmhouse, feeling lighter than he had in months, because the simple act of mercy had watered the roots of hope in his heart. Before bed, he wrote in his worn ledger, crossing out seed purchase and adding horse, unknown age, $1, then laughed at how strange it looked. The laugh echoed in the kitchen and settled into silence, but it left a glow brighter than the lone lantern on the windowsill. Jonah fell asleep imagining the horse galloping across green hills he had yet to plant, carrying secrets nobody could guess. Wind rustled the curtains, hinting that tomorrow would start a story worth telling, though neither man nor beast could yet read its pages. At dawn a rooster crowed, and the first thing Jonah thought of was checking on Silver Star, proof that the horse had already carved a space in his daily routine. He hurried out, boots half-laced, and found the barn calm except for the rhythmic chewing of oats and the gentle swish of a tail brushing straw. The horse greeted him with a low nicker that felt like a good morning, and Jonah answered out loud, unashamed of talking as if to a person. He opened the stall gate, noticing Silver Star stood taller today, as if sleep had blown dust off hidden strength. Jonah decided to walk the perimeter pasture, leading the horse so it could stretch, and together they stepped through dew that sparkled like scattered diamonds. A rabbit darted across their path, making the horse twitch, but Jonah's steady hand calmed it before fear could bloom. He marveled at how quickly trust had grown between them, like beans climbing twine, and he vowed to protect this fragile vine. Reaching the far fence, Jonah spotted the old windmill spinning lazily, and he promised himself he would find extra work to buy seed before planting time. Silver Star lifted its head to the breeze, nostrils flaring, and Jonah swore it looked almost regal against the sunrise, like a veteran king surveying new lands. As they turned back toward the barn, Jonah felt the day settle on his shoulders not as a burden, but as a cloak of purpose, stitched with hope and curiosity about the road ahead. That afternoon, while Jonah repaired a loose fence rail, Silver Star began to paw at one spot near the apple orchard, as though stomping out a stubborn ember hidden in the soil. Jonah thought the horse was playing until water bubbled from the shallow print, clear as glass and cold as creek melt, soaking the ground in seconds where grass had always seemed thirsty. Amazed, the farmer watched a tiny stream form, and he rubbed his beard, recalling that his grandfather once claimed springs wandered like shy deer, reappearing for those who treated animals kindly. He fetched a tin cup and tasted the trickle, finding it sweeter than well water, and he laughed because his crops might survive the dry season after all. The horse swung its head toward the distant hills as if telling him this was only the beginning, a gesture that sent a chill of wonder racing along his backbone. Eager to test a hunch, Jonah walked Silver Star to the far pasture where grass had turned brittle, and again the horse pawed, revealing another thin ribbon of water that shimmered under the sun. Neighbors drove by, slowing their trucks to stare at the sudden wet patches, and rumors began circling like barn swallows about Jonah's miraculous horse. That night at supper, Jonah's brother Wade dropped by and teased him, saying folks claimed the old mare could sniff out gold, but Jonah simply smiled and spooned stew, keeping his thoughts quiet. Before dawn, Wade returned with metal rods and a skeptical grin, determined to solve the puzzle, yet every spot the horse indicated burst forth with water, not treasure, leaving Wade speechless. Word spread to the county newspaper, and a reporter named Ellie Brooks arrived, notebook in hand, eager for a story that might sell copies during a slow news week. Ellie asked polite questions while adjusting her glasses, and Silver Star seemed to pose proudly. Ears pricked as camera shutters clicked like popcorn popping in a kettle. Jonah answered as best he could, admitting he knew little except that kindness had guided his purchase, and now the horse was guiding him in return. Ellie wrote the headline "Pity Purchase Pays Off, Farmer Finds Living Water Detector," a title that made Jonah blush when he saw it pasted on the post office window. Mail carriers, teachers, and even shy librarians stopped him to ask if the tale was true, and Jonah invited them to see for themselves, preferring proof over loud promises. Visitors arrived every day, bringing pies, questions, and buckets, and Jonah let the horse choose spots where ground would break and fresh springs would rise like fireworks. He kept careful notes in a spiral notebook, describing each location, the taste of the water, and the horse's odd habit of looking east after every discovery. Maple Ridge soon bustled with excitement, yet Jonah worried fame might bring trouble, because valuable things often attracted people willing to bend rules. He decided to keep Silver Star's nightly walk secret, choosing the silence of moonlit fields to explore without an audience or flashbulbs. Under starlight, the horse moved with purpose, tracing arcs across plowed rows, stopping only when crickets fell silent and a distant owl hooted twice. At each pause, Jonah marked the ground with a wooden stake, planning to dig test wells later, and he marveled at how quickly hope could multiply when watered by wonder. One evening, Silver Star halted near the old stone boundary marker at the edge of the county, stamping twice, then 3 times, before whinnying in a tone Jonah had never heard. The sound echoed through pine trees and bounced back, carrying a haunting note like a song from a forgotten language, sending goosebumps across Jonah's arms. A faint blue glow flared around the horseshoes, and the crossed arrow emblem shone bright enough to light the grass tips, making Jonah gasp. In that eerie light, he noticed symbols carved on the boundary stone, matching the mark on the shoes, a discovery that felt like 2 puzzle pieces snapping together. Jonah traced the carvings with shaking fingers, realizing the stone predated the town itself, perhaps left by explorers or tribes who followed hidden water paths. The horse waited patiently, eyes reflecting stars, and Jonah sensed the animal wanted him to understand something deeper than fresh springs or lucky guesses. He fetched a lantern and sketched the stone markings in his notebook, promising himself further research before telling anyone else. Back at the farmhouse, he pulled dusty encyclopedias from a trunk, searching for tales of water seekers, but found only legends of arrow-hoofed horses guiding lost settlers. He read until dawn, learning that the emblem meant path to life in an old dialect scarcely remembered, and he wondered if Silver Star was last of a rare breed bred for finding lifelines. Exhausted yet thrilled, he slept a few hours and then faced a porch full of strangers wanting demonstrations, though he politely refused, saying the animal needed rest. A traveling salesman offered to buy the horse for a ridiculous sum, but Jonah shook his head, knowing some treasures were not meant to be traded like sacks of grain. Silver Star, sensing tension, placed its muzzle on Jonah's shoulder, calming him. The salesman left muttering about missed fortunes. Rain finally came, fed by clouds that seemed to follow the new springs, and fields once dull greened up, promising a record harvest if luck held true. Children splashed in the fresh stream by the willow grove, naming it Star Run, and parents hung linen to dry on lines strung nearby, thankful for clean water close to home. The local school invited Jonah to speak, and he stood in front of eager students, explaining respect for animals using words simple enough for first graders but meaningful for adults too. He brought Silver Star to the playground, and the horse stood calmly while children patted its neck, each small hand becoming part of a growing circle of goodwill. A shy student asked how the horse learned its talent, and Jonah admitted he did not train it, teaching the lesson that some gifts come ready-made, waiting for faith to notice. That afternoon, Ellie's article hit the state newswire, and inquiries arrived from universities wanting to study the phenomenon, offering grants and lab equipment. Jonah read the letters with caution, wondering if science would honor the gentle mystery or dissect it until no magic remained. He promised Silver Star he would protect their quiet bond, even as opportunity knocked louder than hail on a tin roof, and the horse flicked an ear in peaceful agreement. With summer approaching, Jonah finally agreed to let a small university team visit, provided they treated Silver Star with respect and remembered the animal was partner, not experiment. The team arrived in a rattling van, unloading notebooks, gentle sensors, and lightweight hoops designed to measure the horse's hoof pressure without causing discomfort. Dr. Amelia Crane, a hydrologist with twinkling eyes, introduced herself by offering the horse an apple slice, earning an immediate nod of approval from the wary animal. She explained to Jonah that ancient cultures sometimes bonded with animals to locate life's essentials, and she believed Silver Star might be living proof that such traditions held science inside them. Jonah listened, half curious, half protective, and decided to let her place harmless bands around the horse's ankles, each one connected to a tiny transmitter no bigger than a button. Over the next week, charts appeared on the farmhouse kitchen wall, colored lines rising whenever the horse stamped near a hidden spring, creating patterns like gentle hills on a map. Dr. Crane noted a repeating sequence that pointed not just to water, but to a clear path leading toward Misty Hollow, a narrow valley avoided by locals because of sudden sinkholes. Wade joked about buried pirate chests, yet Amelia suggested the hollow might hide a vast aquifer feeding the county, clogged only by rockfalls that disrupted flow. Jonah weighed their words like seed grain, realizing that restoring such a source could bless every farm for miles, though the journey carried risk. They planned a dawn expedition, packing rope, first aid kits, and a coil of pipe for testing water depth, while Patch the dog barked excitedly at the activity. Silver Star trotted ahead with calm purpose, hooves clicking on pebble roads in a rhythm that felt like a ticking clock urging them onward. As they passed the schoolhouse, children pressed faces to windows, cheering, and Jonah tipped his hat, promising silently to bring back good news. The trail narrowed to a footpath lined with ferns taller than a child, and birdsong echoed through cedars, creating a chorus equal parts welcome and warning. Halfway up a ridge, the horse paused, ears pivoting, before leading them toward a hidden ravine carpeted with moss thick as a blanket. Amelia used a handheld scanner, confirming moisture readings so high they nearly maxed the dial, proof of water surging somewhere beneath. Wade anchored a rope around a sturdy oak, and Jonah descended first, testing each foothold, the horse watching from above like a patient guardian. At the ravine floor, he found a round stone door set into the cliff face, etched with the crossed arrows and additional curves resembling waves. Silver Star neighed loudly, echo bouncing off walls, and a hidden latch clicked, causing the stone to grind aside just enough to reveal a dark tunnel. Everyone gasped as cool air rushed out carrying the scent of wet earth and distant blossoms, unexpected perfume in a place untouched by sunlight. Patch whimpered but stayed close, while Jonah lit a lantern, its glow shaking in his hand more from awe than fear. They followed the tunnel single file, footsteps muffled by damp clay, and within minutes heard the unmistakable rush of fast water ahead. The passage opened into a cavern so wide their lantern only teased its far edges, but what they could see made hearts race. A clear underground river flowed over crystals shining like stars at night. Silver Star stepped to the water's edge, dipped a hoof, and the crystals flickered brighter, casting rainbows over dripping stalactites that looked like giant candles. Amelia took samples, exclaiming the water was purer than any spring she had tested, with mineral content perfect for crops and safe for drinking without treatment. The stone pedestal rose in the center of the cavern, holding a metal box the size of a loaf of bread, engraved with the same arrows and image of a horse leaping over waves. Wade reached for it, but Jonah stopped him, suggesting perhaps the horse should decide, and Silver Star moved forward, nudging the lid open with an intent almost human. Inside lay scrolls sealed in wax, still dry after unknown years, along with a polished metal medallion shaped like a hoof print crossed by arrows, the twin of the emblem on Silver Star's shoes. Amelia's voice trembled as she translated the old words, which spoke of a brotherhood sworn to safeguard living compasses, horses trained to guide settlers to water whenever drought threatened. The scroll declared that only a person acting from pure compassion could earn a horse's full trust and find the flowing heart of the earth they guarded. Jonah felt his throat close with emotion, remembering the quiet impulse that made him raise his hand at the auction, an act born not from profit but mercy. The medallion, surprisingly warm, pulsed with a faint blue glow when placed in Jonah's palm, while Silver Star bowed slightly, sealing a bond older than any fence line. Amelia theorized the glow was piezoelectric energy produced by pressure from the horse's movement, yet that could not explain the feeling of calm that spread through the group like sunrise over fields. They filled sample jars, but took only photographs of the crystals, choosing preservation over greed, and planned a discreet report to the county council for careful management. As they prepared to leave, Silver Star nudged one crystal loose, rolling it to Jonah. It shone kindly, small enough to keep his token yet bright enough to recall the hidden river. Back in daylight they sealed the stone door, noting its clever design allowed water to flow unblocked while keeping careless explorers out. Wade hammered a wooden sign reading Conservation Zone, entry by permit only, and Amelia marked coordinates in her log, promising to lobby for protection laws. The return trip felt shorter, perhaps because every step carried the buoyancy of success, or because the horse set a brisk pace eager to return home. At the farmyard, townsfolk waited with picnic baskets, worried yet hopeful, and cheers erupted when they saw wide smiles and muddy boots, a sure sign of adventure achieved. Jonah told a gentle version of the story, emphasizing respect for nature, and promised fair access to water once pipelines could be installed by responsible hands. That night, Jonah hung the medallion near the kitchen window, where moonlight made it flicker, reminding him that a single act of kindness had opened a river beneath stone. The following month, engineers from 2 counties arrived with survey tools, and Jonah insisted they sign agreements promising no digging without wildlife studies and strict replanting of every tree disturbed. Some investors tried to rush paperwork, waving big numbers, but the county council sided with Jonah after hearing children testify about clean water and Silver Star's gentle heroism. A foundation grant funded eco-friendly pipes that would carry spring water to farms while maintaining cavern pressure, a plan drawn up by Dr. Crane on a chalkboard sticky with chalk dust. Wade coordinated volunteers, teaching them how to plant saplings along trench lines, and soon green corridors emerged where bare soil once baked under harsh sun. Silver Star supervised from a nearby hill, ears flicking, occasionally guiding crews away from unstable ground by stomping twice and eyeing safer routes. Reporters returned, some hoping for scandals, but the story grew only brighter, like a lantern fed fresh oil, as every test proved the water pure and the land healing. Still, tension brewed when a mining company petitioned for exploration rights, claiming mineral wealth beneath Misty Hollow, a move that threatened to drain or contaminate the new lifeline. Jonah attended the public hearing, wearing his oldest work shirt to remind officials of simple roots, and carried the glowing medallion as evidence of sacred stewardship. He spoke plain words, explaining that quick cash could not replace soil fertility or future harvests, and parents in the audience nodded, picturing meals their children would enjoy thanks to steady crops. The council voted to deny the mining claim, but the company's attorney hinted at state appeals, leaving an uneasy hush in the meeting hall like cold wind sneaking through cracks. That night, Jonah walked the fence line, feeling the weight of possible legal battles, when Silver Star pricked its ears toward the horizon where distant headlights glittered. Moments later, an unmarked truck roared down the dirt lane, braking near the barn. Masked figures jumped out, carrying drilling gear clearly meant for secret theft of crystal samples. Patch barked furiously and Jonah shouted, but the intruders advanced until Silver Star charged, hooves striking ground with thunder that made the men freeze. A sudden blue flare burst from the horseshoes, illuminating the yard like daytime, and the raiders dropped their tools, stumbling in terror before fleeing into the night. Wade arrived with deputies, guided by the lights still lingering around the horse, and tracks in the dirt proved intent to steal what belonged to the community. News of the attempted theft spread, turning public opinion fully against any outsider greed, and the state quickly backed the local conservation ordinance. Dr. Crane installed discreet motion cameras, and volunteers formed a night watch rotation, bringing thermoses of cocoa and swapping stories beneath starlight while Silver Star kept silent vigil. Danger seemed to pass, but Jonah noticed the horse growing restless, pacing at dusk as though sensing unfinished tasks tugging from the deeper earth. He consulted Amelia, who reviewed her data and realized several underground channels remained blocked, limiting river flow. The horse was urging them to finish the restoration properly. New maps were drafted, showing likely choke points, and crews prepared to clear debris with minimal blasting, but only after wildlife experts relocated nesting bats and cave salamanders. On the appointed day, Silver Star led them to a limestone arch, tapping the ground until sensors confirmed a collapsed passage 10 feet below. Engineers used precision tools rather than explosives, chiseling stone like sculptors, and water soon gushed through the widened gap, increasing river volume by a third. Cheers echoed through the cavern, but the noise triggered a rumble as a hidden pocket of gas escaped, releasing a shock that knocked tools loose and dimmed lanterns. Jonah steadied Amelia while Wade ushered workers to safe ground, yet Silver Star stepped forward, placing its weight on a crack that threatened to widen, somehow stabilizing the slab. The blue glow intensified, seeming to fuse microfractures until the tremor subsided. Afterward, a faint line of light remained traced across the stone like freshly drawn chalk. Amelia collected fragments from the glowing seam, later discovering natural piezo crystals that emitted energy when compressed, explaining in part the horse's luminous reactions. She theorized the horseshoes, forged long ago from similar crystal-infused metal, allowed the animal to sense stress changes in rock and guide humans accordingly. Understanding blossomed like sunrise. Silver Star was not magic in the fairy tale sense, but a living, breathing sensor shaped by generations of careful breeding and respectful partnership. The revelation strengthened community pride, proving science and wonder could coexist without canceling each other, much like sun and moon sharing the sky at dawn. Schoolchildren drew posters titled "Listen to the Land," featuring Silver Star as mascot, and art shows raised funds for additional conservation along the river's newly energized flow. Jonah felt gratitude overflow like buckets under a rain barrel, yet he remained humble, always crediting the horse and the village teamwork rather than claiming hero status. One crisp morning, the governor's office announced an environmental award for Maple Ridge, inviting Jonah, Dr. Crane, and, if possible, Silver Star to the Capitol ceremony. Jonah laughed at the idea of the horse riding an elevator, but Amelia arranged a trailer padded with hay and decorated with drawings from the school, ensuring a calm journey. During the ceremony, politicians delivered speeches filled with grand vocabulary, yet the loudest applause came when Silver Star bowed on stage, reminding everyone that silent action speaks strongest. A plaque made of reclaimed wood and inset crystal was presented, and Jonah accepted it on behalf of every hand that had planted a tree or carried a pipe. He spoke briefly, urging cities to partner with rural towns, and concluded by lifting the medallion, so its soft blue light danced across audience faces like ripples on river water. The trip home turned into a parade, with roadside crowds waving, but Jonah felt relief when farm gates closed behind them, preferring quiet fields over marble halls. That evening, beneath a harvest moon, Silver Star finally slowed its pacing, resting contentedly as frogs sang near the newborn creek that now crossed the orchard. Jonah sensed the horse's job was nearing completion, though he suspected one final chapter remained hidden like a seed beneath fresh soil, waiting for the right season to sprout. He stroked the horse's neck, promising to listen if it ever signaled again, because their adventure had taught him that whispers of the earth deserved attentive ears. Winter crept toward Maple Ridge with a hush, covering fields in silver frost, yet the new water lines kept soil moist enough for renegade spinach patches that refused to quit growing. Jonah delivered baskets of crisp greens to neighbors, and each gift carried a story about Silver Star, now considered the village elder despite still being, at heart, a rescued stray. Dr. Crane returned for follow-up tests, noting river flow remained steady, and she suggested measuring further upstream to understand the full reach of the cavern network. Silver Star nickered at the idea, stamping once, then leading the team north toward the foothills where dense fog often lingered like a sleepy cat across early snow. They trekked for hours, frost crunching under boots, until the horse halted before a rock wall laced with ice curtains, a place Jonah had never dared explore. Patch sniffed the air and whined, sensing movement beyond the frozen veils. But Silver Star stepped forward, melting thin sheets of ice with a quiet warmth radiating from its hoofs. Behind the shimmering doorway lay a hidden meadow glowing emerald despite the season, warmed by underground vents that filled the space with gentle steam and the scent of wild mint. In that secret pasture grazed 5 other horses, each wearing dull, rune-etched shoes too, coats ranging from coal black to sunrise gold, their eyes bright with recognition as Silver Star approached. Jonah's breath caught. He realized his friend had never been alone but had endured exile until compassion opened the path home. Dr. Crane whispered that the meadow must sit above another crystal river, creating a microclimate where the herd survived when hills outside froze. A chestnut mare walked up, touching noses with Silver Star, and a ripple of color pulsed along both sets of shoes, painting the grass with sparks of blue light. Wade muttered it looked like a family reunion, while Amelia began counting horseshoes, predicting enough genetic diversity to rebuild the rare line if protected from poachers. A weathered wooden sign, half buried in moss, read Sanctuary of the Wayfinders, confirming legends of caretakers who once guided pioneers across thirsty plains. Jonah felt humbled, knowing his small act of pity had reconnected a broken chain of guardians stretching back through time, like the county road winding into distant hills. They built temporary corrals using fallen branches, only to realize the herd required no walls. The horses stayed close by choice, trusting the people who walked gently. Evening light painted the meadow amber, and Jonah set up camp, sharing bread and stories while the Wayfinders, so he now called them, dozed nearby like calm statues. Amelia recorded hoof patterns under infrared lenses, discovering faint vibrations synchronized with subterranean water pulses, akin to heartbeat and artery in living stone. She proposed that the horses felt resonance through crystal shoes, translating geological rhythm into directional instinct, a concept simple enough for curious children once explained with drums and tuning forks. Jonah smiled, picturing school lessons where kids banged pans to mimic tectonic beats, understanding nature as music rather than cold equation. The next morning, they guided the herd back to Maple Ridge along quiet trails at dawn, silver mist swirling around hoofbeats like silk ribbons. Villagers lined streets even before breakfast, alerted by Wade's phone call, and gasps of wonder rolled like waves when the colorful herd trotted into the square. Mayor Lawson proclaimed the day Wayfinder Wednesday, promising annual celebrations to honor the bond between land, animals, and kind hearts. Volunteers quickly extended pasture fences, ensuring each horse had room, while local carpenters built a low-roofed shelter using reclaimed barn with that smelled of sweet cedar. Children painted signs explaining the water-finding gift in words a 6-year-old could read, adding bright drawings so younger siblings would learn too. State officials sent biologists to help vaccinate the new arrivals, and the horses stood peacefully, as if they sensed shots would secure long lives. He formed a non-profit trust, placing ownership of the horses and the spring under community control, preventing any single person from exploiting the treasure. Grant money flowed, but guidelines limited spending to sustainability projects like solar pumps and native grass restoration, choices voted on during open town meetings. Tour groups were allowed twice a week, guided by student docents who told stories emphasizing stewardship over spectacle. Silver Star often led these tours, stopping at favorite shade spots so kids could pet a velvet nose and feel a faint vibration, like listening to a secret drum. On quiet days, Jonas still walked the original Orchard Creek, remembering the first spring, its water now singing over smooth stones on its way to join the larger river. He planted saplings along the bank in honor of Ruth, each tree a silent thank you to the courage she once inspired with simple words. Kindness is never wasted. Wade joked that his brother had become a legend, but Jonah shrugged, insisting legends are only diaries written in big letters. The real miracles were everyday choices. Patch, growing gray around a muzzle, trotted beside Silver Star, proving even old friends can learn new rhythms when the earth hums fresh tunes. As snow melted into early spring, countless wildflowers appeared where pipes ran, as if seeds hidden for decades sensed the safe water and woke up to paint the fields. Dr. Crane published her findings in a journal, yet the conclusion remained plain: respect the planet, and sometimes it answers back through horse hooves and crystal songs. The state invited Maple Ridge students to design a flag representing land and water unity, and the winning banner showed a horse silhouette crossing 2 blue arrows against green hills. Jonah hung the flag over the barn door, feeling the story had come full circle, yet he knew life spins like wagon wheels, always finding the next patch of road. One afternoon, he found Silver Star standing at the fence line, gazing west where clouds glowed magenta, and he sensed the horse might soon seek another soul in need of gentle guidance. He opened the gate, whispering that true gifts are meant to travel, but Silver Star simply nuzzled his shoulder, choosing to stay until its journey was required elsewhere. Together they walked back to the barn, steps slow and content, as distant thunder hinted at rain, reminding Jonah that water, like kindness, keeps moving, sowing life wherever it flows. Years rolled by like gentle waves, and Maple Ridge transformed from a quiet farming outpost into a study destination for students eager to learn how kindness grew both crops and community. Silver Star aged gracefully, coat bright and eyes alert, often seen teaching foals from the Wayfinder herd how to read the ground the way others read storybooks. Jonah, hair now peppered with gray, hosted seasonal workshops, showing families how to plant orchards near new springs and reminding them to thank the horses with soft words and crisp apples. One spring festival, Amelia returned with university interns who installed solar-powered sensors to monitor river flow. They named the system StarNet in honor of the horse who started it all. Data streamed to classrooms, and sixth graders graphed water levels alongside rainfall, proving science could feel like adventure instead of homework. Wade expanded his carpentry shop into a makerspace, where kids hammered scrap wood into birdhouses, placing them along pipes so swallows could feast on insects and keep eco-balance strong, even when grown-ups forgot the small stuff. Patch eventually passed away under the old oak, and Jonah buried him beside Ruth's favorite rosebush, the ceremony quiet except for Silver Star's soft, respectful whinny. That night, Jonah followed tradition by planting another sapling, marking each loss with new life, a practice now copied by towns across the county. Not long afterward, the mining company resurfaced with a new legal strategy, claiming rights to deeper layers, but this time Maple Ridge was ready. Students presented charts showing the damage drilling could cause to aquifers, and the courtroom buzzed as young voices replaced hired lawyers' rhetoric with clear facts and heartfelt stories. Faced with public outcry and undeniable data, the company withdrew, choosing instead to fund a scholarship program for hydrology studies, a surprising turn that left everyone cheering. The first scholarship recipient was Maya Lawson, the mayor's niece, whose dream was to study water ethics. She credited Silver Star for sparking her curiosity during elementary field trips. Meanwhile, the Wayfinder herd thrived, foals growing into lean, graceful guides, their shoes, crafted by local blacksmiths using carefully rationed crystal flakes, shining beneath moon and sun alike. Each foal was paired with a student mentor who learned respect, patience, and observation, lessons impossible to gain from screens or textbooks alone. Jonah sometimes sat on his porch at dusk, listening to distant hoofbeats echo through hills, a music he never tired of, because it meant the land and its guardians were still talking. One calm evening, Silver Star approached, nudging the medallion hanging by the door, the glow pulsing stronger than it had in years. Jonah recognized the sign, a new seeker somewhere needed help, and the horse was ready to answer the call beyond Maple Ridge. He saddled up lightly, heart heavy yet proud, and together they followed the western road until they reached a crossroads where a tired traveler huddled by a broken wagon. The traveler, a young woman named Clara, had lost her route due to dried rivers, her crops at home failing, but she still shared her last loaf of bread with a stray dog. Silver Star stepped forward, touching Clara's arm, and the medallion flickered like sunrise on water, confirming her compassion. Jonah explained the Wayfinder's secret, offering guidance, while Silver Star waited patiently, eyes reflecting campfire flames like twin moons. Clara agreed to accompany them back to Maple Ridge for training, eager to learn and eventually guide life-giving water to her drought-stricken valley. As they traveled, Silver Star taught by example, pausing at each ridge to feel vibrations, letting Clara rest her hand on its neck to sense subtle signals. Upon reaching town, the herd welcomed her arrival, surrounding the visitor with gentle curiosity, and Jonah saw new threads in the tapestry of kindness. Maya volunteered to mentor Clara, combining academic knowledge with fresh hope, and soon laughter rose from the barn like warm bread scent. The governor declared a statewide Listen to the Land Week, encouraging schools to plant trees and hold silent walks, activities rooted in Maple Ridge's quiet revolution. Librarians compiled oral histories, capturing elders' memories of the first spring and children's dreams for future rivers, binding pages into a book titled Hoofbeats of Hope. Jonah contributed a humble foreword, reminding readers that the story started with $1 and one decision to see value where others saw loss. The book won regional awards, but its greatest honor was being borrowed so often that librarians had to tape its binding and print extra copies. Tourists still visited, though numbers were controlled to protect pastures, and they left with seeds to plant at home, symbolizing ideas taking root far beyond county lines. One crisp autumn morning, Silver Star, now grayer around a muzzle, led Jonah to the orchard creek where everything began, the water still singing bright tunes. The horse lowered its head, almost in prayer, and Jonah knew his friend's traveling days were nearing an end, but the mission would continue through younger hoofs. He sat beside the horse until stars ignited overhead, promising to carry the torch of mercy long after the blue glow dimmed. The next day, Silver Star slept longer than usual, and by sunset the horse passed peacefully under a rainbow sky, surrounded by the herd, villagers, and Clara's gentle song. Tears fell like warm rain, yet not a heart broke completely, because gratitude knit sorrow into a blanket of shared memory. They held a vigil at the barn, hanging lanterns whose reflections danced on creek water, each light a thank you whisper into night air. The medallion was mounted on a stone beside Ruth's roses and Patch's resting place, forming a small sanctuary where stories could be told to new generations. Clara, Maya, and dozens of students pledged to keep the Wayfinder's legacy alive, promising never to trade wonder for greed. Jonah, weary but content, planted one final sapling, saying, "For every kindness given, another tree will grow," words that echoed across fields and found a home in listening hearts. On the day buds opened on that sapling, a foal born from Silver Star's line took its first steps near the creek, the shoes glowing pale blue, proving pity can open doors, kindness can unlock rivers, and a quiet hoofbeat can guide the world to water. Spring blurred into summer, and Clara's training with the Wayfinder herd became as steady as sunrise, her gentle voice guiding young hoofbeats the way teachers guide students through spelling drills. When school let out, visiting kids followed her across the pasture, practicing quiet steps so they could feel tiny shivers in the ground whenever the crystal shoes touched buried water paths. Maya set up colorful posters near each learning station, turning the farm into an outdoor classroom where science facts shared space with stories, making both feel like parts of the same adventure book. Jonah watched from his porch swing, heart swelling whenever a child knelt to plant a sapling, because he knew trees remember kindness longer than people remember newspaper headlines. The foal born of Silver Star's line now stood tall enough to nose the fence rail, and its shoes glowed a softer blue than its parents', like morning sky instead of full noon. Clara named the foal Riverlight, saying the colt's eyes held the sparkle of moving water and the promise of steady guidance for places still waiting to drink. Engineers visited again with drones that mapped moisture lines, but they took off their hard hats and bowed jokingly toward Riverlight, admitting the machines still followed where the hooves pointed. A shipping container classroom arrived from a city donor, painted bright green, and it housed touch screen maps that lit up whenever students entered new spring data gathered during weekend hikes. Wade built a deck around the container so wheelchairs could roll right up, because he believed every kid deserved front seats to nature's best show, and he carved wooden railings with tiny arrowhoof symbols to remind visitors where the project started. At the annual county fair, Clara led Riverlight in the kindness parade rather than the show ring, explaining to judges that real trophies were measured in gallons of saved crops, not ribbons. A small town 2 valleys west sent an urgent letter, describing wells running dry even after heavy rain, gardens shriveling like pages in a hot attic, and families fearing winter would taste of dust instead of soup. Jonah convened a farmhouse council beneath the big oak, where elders, teenagers, and toddlers all found seats on hay bales, proving decisions work best when everyone fits at the table. They agreed to send a scouting team led by Clara and Riverlight, packed with seed packets, water testing kits, and library books about soil care written in comic style for easy reading. Before dawn, the pair set out along a wagon trail lined with Queen Anne's lace, dew shining like fairy lights while birds offered a traveling song high in the maple branches. Maya radioed updates back to the farm, plotting their route on the StarNet dashboard so classrooms could follow the journey like a live treasure map. Halfway there, Riverlight veered off the main road toward a stretch of cracked earth where grass looked burnt even though no fire had touched it, the ground giving off a sigh, longing for someone to speak its forgotten language. Clara trusted the instinct, allowing the colt to paw gently until swirling dust cleared and a faint damp patch appeared, the first shy hint of hope that water still lingered underground like a letter never mailed. She marked the spot with a painted stake, explaining to local children that the earth sometimes whispers, and that listening very closely means you must quiet your own fears to hear it. The townspeople brought shovels, forming a human circle around Riverlight, and they dug in shifts, singing camp songs to keep pace with a cold, steady breathing and to push back the hush of worry that had filled their nights. Several feet down, soil darkened and cool air rose, causing cheers that bounced off empty barns like echoes waking from long naps. Water seeped, then flowed, filling a bucket in minutes, and elders dipped their hands, tears mixing with mud as they tasted relief they thought was gone forever. Clara instructed everyone to line the new well with smooth stones, teaching them the pattern she learned from Jonah: wide stones at the bottom, narrower near the top for strength. She left each family with a sapling and a promise that trees root deeper when planted near gratitude, a lesson Riverlight illustrated by nudging seedlings into waiting hands. News outlets try to sensationalize the story, but Clara insisted reporters include step-by-step guides so other communities could learn instead of simply marvel. Back in Maple Ridge, Jonah drafted a manual called Hoofbeats to help, combining simple drawings, 7th-grade vocabulary, and blank pages for local notes, while printers donated paper from recycled straw and postage was covered by bake sale profits, turning lemon bars and oatmeal cookies into fuel for knowledge delivery. Wade's makerspace built wooden crates stamped with the Wayfinder emblem, ensuring manuals arrived intact even after bumpy rides on gravel roads. Within months, photos poured in from distant counties showing children beside fresh wells, each picture featuring a homemade blue ribbon tied around the first bucket of clear water. Riverlight, barely a year old, had unwittingly become a symbol on classroom banners, standing under cartoon clouds that dripped hope instead of rain. Jonah smiled at the art but reminded visitors that symbols matter only if followed by steady work, like seeds matter only if pushed into soil and watered. In late autumn, the governor returned to dedicate a new state park encompassing Misty Hollow, complete with hiking trails named after each original Wayfinder horse. During the ceremony, Riverlight tapped the rock where Silver Star first revealed the underground river, and a gentle hum vibrated through everyone's shoes, as if approving the milestone. Maya recorded the vibration frequency, sharing it later with music teachers who turned the numbers into melodies students could play on recorders, turning data into song. Clara planted a final sapling near the memorial stones, and schoolchildren hung paper wishes on its branches, promising to carry kindness farther than any horse could walk. That night, campfires dotted the valley like low stars, and storytellers of every age shared chapters of the journey, careful to highlight mistakes alongside successes. A meteor shower streaked overhead, and Jonah told the youngest listeners that those shining trails were the universe's way of writing applause across the sky. Riverlight lay beside the coals, eyes half closed, dreaming perhaps of rivers still hidden, while Patch's grand pup curled against its flank, proving new friendships keep old memories alive. As embers faded, Clara sketched future routes in her journal, noting that compassion, not speed, should set the pace, because water saved in trust lasts longer than water hauled in haste. Jonah closed the gathering with one quiet reminder: every droplet in a creek once fell as rain somewhere else, so every act of mercy here could nourish strangers beyond any map. The crowd dispersed in soft conversation, carrying lanterns whose glow lingered like echoes of Silver Star's light, guiding careful footsteps back to tents and porches. Under the first frost of winter, Riverlight lifted its head toward distant hills, ears twitching at rhythms only Wayfinders hear, and Clara packed a saddlebag, ready to follow when the time was right.